Hi, my name's Orphy Robinson, and this is the Ivors Academy International Jazz Day conversations with our special guest. So, my guest today is John Beasley, composer, musician, Grammy winner, Emmy nominated, lots of different awards, but also one of the most interesting composers because of the length and breadth of, I think, of what you do. So, it would be good, probably, to kind of start from the beginning, composing. Why?
It's interesting. My dad was a composer. My dad did a lot of things. Um, he was a pianist, and then eventually a jazz pianist. And then in the army, he took up bassoon and became a you know doubler bassoon and piano person, and gigged you know at this point all over the South and Texas, where Louisiana and Texas, where I grew up.
Okay.
But he was also a composer and an arranger. And in the morning, I would hear him writing pieces. And for me, as a kid, it was just, oh, this is something my dad does. It's a little geeky compared to my friend whose father's a football coach or something, but, this is what my dad does. And there was always instruments around the house, and my mom was a band director, and my grandfather was a band director, so it was just sort of a natural thing around the house. But I remember listening to him in the morning before I would get up, because he'd do it before he had to go to school. He taught at North Texas State University at the time. That's what it was called. Years later, I mean, they made me start taking piano lessons at 8. But I was sort of already diddling and stuff, and he brought home I started getting interested in having garage bands and stuff like that, playing Hendrix and Earth, Wind and Fire or whatever, and then eventually Blood, Sweat and Tears in Chicago with the horn bands and stuff, and so for my birthday he bought me a Blood, Sweat and Tears record one year. The next year he bought me Central Park North, Thad Jones and Mel Lewis, and that record changed my life. I wanted to be Thad Jones, and so I really got into music then, and I was playing piano, cool, but I was really more interested in being a composer and arranger, first, and I think my piano playing has been a product of that. Usually it's the other way around, but I kind of came that way. And also because at North Texas, they had like 10 big bands. It was really known for being the big band school. So I would go to those performances when I was a kid, and those were sort of some of my early heroes and stuff. Those students. And the next year I was Walking in Space, and I got totally into Quincy Jones, and so that's how it started for me. And because of Quincy, I wanted to do film music, and because of the generation that I come from, it was sort of a wide open spectrum of quote unquote jazz music that you could do.
Okay.
Funk was starting to happen with jazz, electronica. I was still really into Art Blakey and Dexter, and of course Miles, and all the acoustic music. I was listening to Train, and a little Anthony Braxton. It was just wide open back in those days,
Yeah.
and it was cool if you did it all.
Yeah.
I mean, Herbie Wawandishi band. They
Wow.
did it all, right, and with electronics or whatever. So it was a wide open slate, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't until sort of the '90s when it got all buttoned down and
This is true.
segregated again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's sort of how I got into the music. That's how I got in.
But because it sounds like a 360 look at music, which gave you a wider panorama and a kind of palette to choose from. And that, was there a time where you kind of thought, okay, the music's here, but maybe the instrument I play, which is a pianist, I consider that as the whole orchestra. You are the orchestra. Was there a period where you thought, I will concentrate on certain inspiring piano players. And that,
Oh yeah.
who
As soon
were
as I
they?
heard Maiden Voyage,
Oh,
that completely changed my life, you know.
right.
And from that point, I went back and checked out Bud Powell and Horace Silver and the Cedar Walton. I was really into Cedar Walton,
Yeah.
but mostly I was inspired by horn players. I loved Freddie. You know, I wore out all of his records and
Yes.
LCTI records
Yeah.
and of course McCoy. You
Right.
know,
Okay.
and then it was a Freddie Hubbard record called Skydive that I heard Keith Jarrett. That was amazing. And
Yes.
then and of course I went and checked out his records. And then of course Chick, Light as a Feather, and then went back to Now He Sings, Now He Sobs, and all that. But you
Yep.
know, and then Chick being a composer, right? Here's
Yes.
a guy, and at that point in Herbie's life, he was composing all the time, and
Mm.
also doing films and different kinds of stuff. And Chick, seemed like every record was all Chick Corea compositions.
Right. Right.
And so I just kept writing and
Yeah.
playing and trying to practice and get
But
better.
you said about the R&B bands, and you named some great bands there as well. Did you ever have your own R&B band?
Oh yeah, for sure. That's what we did.
Right.
We were
Right.
playing Sly tunes and uh, do you ever heard the Watts 103rd Street
Oh,
Rhythm Band?
yes. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
Dave Gadsden, those guys.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So
amazing.
we were kind of into that thing. But I have to say that my dad was writing contemporary classical music. He wasn't writing jazz pieces.
Right.
And I played oboe. He was a bassoonist, so I played oboe all the way through school.
Right.
So in some ways, I feel like hearing him do 12-tone harmony and rose,
Yeah.
and really seeped into my wanting to like stretch harmony. And of course,
Right.
it got me into trouble a lot of times when I was writing for hire or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that's a lot of
Right.
kind of really helped me through that, that reharm thing that Herbie's so great at, and
Yeah.
stretching harmonies.
Did you go to New York to study, or was it just in hometown and at you know the uni where your
Well,
father taught?
yeah. After we left Texas, I spent my last couple of years of high school here in LA,
Okay.
and I was already I was playing with the college kids already by that time,
Yeah.
and I was when we moved here, I was working with some older guys, and of course doing weddings and
Yeah.
top 40 gigs.
Yeah.
I just said yes to everything.
Right.
And I cast a wide net and met a lot of people and
Uh-huh.
started working a little bit more. And you know, my dad was a teacher. I kind of rebelled against the teaching thing,
Yes.
and I felt like I was living the sort of traditional jazz route by learning on the stage with older musicians. And
Yeah.
at that point, in LA, Herbie had moved out here, Chick was out here, Freddie Hubbard was out here, Bobby Hutcherson and Joe Henderson were up in San Francisco, um, Joe Farrell, and
Okay.
then all the other LA guys that were here. So there's a lot going on. It's not like it is now. There were probably 10 happening jazz clubs where they bring people in from
Right.
all over the world.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on. So I just stayed in, and I didn't go to school. I didn't go to college.
Okay. Yeah.
So also the other reason was that I got an oboe scholarship to Juilliard, but they didn't have a jazz program then, and I was already gigging here, and then yeah, I could have gone back to North Texas, but I just left Denton,
Right. Yeah.
small town, and then University of Indiana. You know,
Yeah.
it's just like Denton. This is another small town. It was just like I left there. And
Yes.
then there was Berkeley, but I think there was about only four at this point. It wasn't like it is now. You can go to just
Yes.
about anywhere and get a jazz degree right
Yes.
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
In fact, in the
but so that's what I did. I did old school. I kind of had this romantic notion of of doing it the way the generation before me did, and just
Right.
by gigging and stuff. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Because in
So
the
after a little while here, I did move to New York
oh
and spent some time there. And
yeah
then some of my friends would get a gig here, so I'd come back.
yes yeah
And then as soon as that gig was over, because I really wanted to be a New York musician,
right
go back to New York.
yeah
So that happened. That was going on for quite a while.
yeah.
And then finally I got married and had a kid. So
So what was the first sort of gig that you would call the sort of regular touring, but of a different level? So it was a maybe a better quality of gig or something. Venues like that.
um, I guess Sergio Mendes.
Joe Mendes. Ah, okay.
Yeah. I was playing in an Afro-Cuban jazz band, like with Ray Armando and Justo Mario, some of these guys.
Yes.
And a friend of the percussionist played with Sergio and said, yeah, they're looking for a second keyboard at that point.
Yeah.
This was, what, 1980 or something.
Sure.
Bands were just now starting to use two keyboard players,
Right.
play synthesizers and play the orchestra parts and stuff.
Yeah.
So he hooked me up. I went and auditioned and got the gig. And so that was sort of the first thing. And man, totally blew my mind
Right.
with Brazilian music, man.
Yeah.
To this day, I know that it had such an influence on me. And one of the hippest things that Sergio did to me, and this is another thing you don't get at school. Well, you do. He did kind of do what you do at school, but in a different way.
Yes.
He had a cassette of Yvonne Lins playing all those songs
Yeah.
on Sergio's living room piano in Niterói,
Right.
right? Just piano and vocal. And he said to me, "Hey kid, I want to learn these voicings, So
Right.
can you transcribe this, for me, doing the melody, the chords, and I really wanted to know those voicings, So um, at this time, I was also working on cruise ships, playing in
Okay.
cocktail lounges, playing standards and stuff, which was a lot of fun for like
Yeah.
a 20-year-old. It was great,
Yeah. Cool.
and so I took him on the ship with me, and wow. And then I also had those 70s records like El Norte and
Ah,
Harlequin, and those are just such amazing records. And so I was listening to writing, I was listening to him, the orchestration, the way it felt. It was just a beautiful music. And so I fell in love with Yvonne Lins. And so I transcribed it, brought him back to Sergio a couple months later, right before the big tour was going to happen.
ah,
So I said, okay, Mr. Mendes, here you are, big stack,
yeah.
Oh, kid, oh, thank you, man. Here you go. I'm going to give them back to you because I don't read music.
Oh,
So he did that for me.
you. That's right. Oh my gosh. Oh,
He paid me. Actually, he paid a little bit, but he
yeah.
paid me,
That
to
that
do a deep dive.
yeah. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. I can imagine, some of the most complex and lovely things happen within Brazilian music. I mean,
Beautiful.
Egberto Gismonti.
Oh yeah. So hence,
Egberto.
you do a deep dive with Yvonne. Eventually, you're going to find out about Alberto Gismonti and Nana Vasconcelos, and
Yes. Yeah.
Djavan was happening at that point.
Yeah.
Gilberto Gil,
Egberto
and then all the other Jobim records that besides Wave, all those
Yeah.
other tunes, Ana Luisa.
Uh-huh.
And the great thing also about that gig is that Sebastian Neto, who was the original bass player in Brazil '66,
Uh-huh.
and also a bunch of Joe Beam records in Brocha
Yeah.
too. He was on the gig, and so was Oscar Castro Neves. So um, when I wasn't playing synthesizers,
Yeah.
those guys taught me all the tambourine rhythms and go-go bell rhythms,
Yeah.
so that I could play
Yeah.
percussion when I wasn't
Brilliant.
playing keyboards.
Yeah.
So I kind of learned that rhythmic structure from those guys. And Oscar, was a really busy arranger and orchestrator at
Yes.
that point.
Yeah.
And he'd be on the road writing. I'd be looking over his shoulder, So it was like school, man.
I know you played with Freddie as well.
Mm-hmm.
How was that? How was
That
that?
was fantastic. It was a few years later.
Mhm.
Um, here you go again. It's word of mouth. I probably met Bob Shepard, who was a saxophone player,
Yes.
great tenor
Yeah.
player.
Yeah.
I think at a jam session, or might even be some corny lounge gig I was doing or something.
Yeah.
And he came in, and then he said, "Yeah, Freddie's looking for a piano player." And so he just gave Freddie's manager my number, and he called me. So the audition was actually a gig.
Right.
So it was up in San Francisco, and it was awesome. Ralph Penland was playing drums, and Herbie Lewis,
Yes. Yeah.
bass player from back then, was playing bass. And I, of course, knew all Freddie's music from earlier. I was a Freddie freak,
Uh huh.
you know.
Yeah.
So I played the gig, and he liked me. He kept calling. It was never like you got the gig. It was
Right.
always like you just kept getting called. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
He
Yeah.
wasn't one of those guys that said, "Oh yeah, you can join the band." He just kept getting called.
Right. Oh,
So yeah, man, that was my graduate school, I guess, man, if you want to call it,
okay.
because
Yeah.
that was the type of gig on a high level
Yes.
where he would call tunes that you don't know. He would just start playing them, you know, and I would be like, God, I hope the bass player knows this shit, so I could, you
Yeah.
know. So, but you had to learn the tune
Yeah.
in front of people, and he would start every set, um, every night, I should say, with Bird Like, blazing, blazing, and we're like, and he's dealing,
Yeah.
and after a while we asked him, man, why you do that, man, and he said, well, from that point it's downhill, man, you're cruising from that point. You kind of got all the
Yeah.
stress out of you,
Yeah.
so that was really interesting. Also, he would do stuff, that I really needed. He'd come up behind me when I'm comping for somebody or soloing and look over my shoulder on
Right.
the gig, like this is like stuff that I would imagine Bird would do, or
Yes.
from that Mingus, what are you playing? Like, on the spot.
That is where you learn.
There
Yeah.
was one time we were playing a club somewhere, and he started playing Stardust,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
So I got through the first part, but then it modulates, when it goes into tune. I got lost, got turned around,
Uh,
and some cat from the audience starts calling the chord changes out for me.
oh no. Oh no.
It's a really fast way to learn that tune.
That really is.
But
Oh, that's a nightmare. Oh wow. But yeah. But yeah, it was part of that.
I
Yeah.
was 22, 23 years old.
Yeah.
It was great for me. It was like, that's what I really wanted. My romantic idea of being a jazz player
Yes.
was, having the cymbal thrown at you
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
at a jam session, or, that's the way cats did it back then,
You also did Miles.
Yeah.
How was that?
This was a period of Miles when we were playing the music from Tutu Mandala. It was 2 years before he passed away,
Right.
1989, and a lot of it was like playing an R&B gig. You played parts. We all had parts,
Yes.
except for we get to these sort of open solos,
Yeah.
and then you could, I got the comp, which was
Right.
cool. But it was like a show gig in a way,
Right.
But I'll have to say, man, that he's probably the most dedicated artist I was ever around, man. It was art 24/7 with that guy, and he wasn't feeling that great all the time,
Sure.
Um, uh, but you'd go to his room and there would be canvases on the floor, that he'd been painting. This is like a couple nights in a hotel, not like a
Right.
week.
Yeah.
He had stuff, usually we're out hanging out in town or at a bar or
Right.
going out to dinner or walking, looking at the city. He's in the room
Yeah.
doing that, and his trumpet would be on the couch. He'd be over there playing a little bit, and then he had a cassette player
Uh-huh.
and he would put the cassette player up to the speaker of something he liked,
Right.
and then learn it back and forward, play it, learn it back and
Okay.
forward, just little chunks. There was a guy that was writing, music for Happy Days and Laverne Shirley sort of sitcom stuff,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and he had this weird notion he wanted to put a band together to go play his music live. Like, who would go see that? But you know, he had this idea. So I guess everybody that was on the session, that he used, did it except for the piano player.
Okay.
So my friend Michael Joachim, great drummer, he was on those sessions, and he said, "Well, you should do this. Just you want to do this gig?" And I was like, "Sure." I would said yes to everything at that
Yeah.
point, and plus I had a Prophet 5,
Oh, wow. Gosh. I've always,
Rhodes and Prophet 5. So I started doing these gigs, and then after a couple weeks, and they were a lot, once every month or something like that.
right.
So the next gig, I hear these guys saying, "Okay, I'll see you at the session tomorrow," da da da. And of course, I wasn't invited, you
Right.
know. But so I told him, I mean, I wasn't invested in his music anyway, or it was cool, but
Yeah.
so I just had nothing to lose, and I said, "Hey man, if your guy can't ever make it, or if I feel like I'm making your gig, if
Yeah.
you want to hire me for the session, that'd be great." So he did.
Right.
Normally that's not my personality, but I did it,
Yeah.
and so that led to me. I met the lady who uh, ran the TV music office at Paramount, and the contractor there, and they started hiring me for sound-alikes at first, and then they
Yeah.
gave me the guy from Cheers did a sabbatical for a few years, and so I filled in for him on that, and
Yeah.
did some other TV writing,
Yes.
and met Carl Fortino, who was a contractor there, and he started using me as a session player. So
Right.
that's how I got kind of into doing sessions, right? Long story short, after a few years, I was really frustrated just doing sitcoms. So I decided, at that point, if you were a sitcom writer, that's all you did. You didn't do drama. And I really wanted to do drama, so, And so I quit cold turkey doing sitcoms, thinking that, oh, yeah, just like the last time, I'll get a drama.
Uh-huh.
No, no. But I kept doing session work,
Yes.
and,
Yeah. Of course.
and eventually, got to do some over the period of the years. But um, so I'm doing session work. I meet Dean Parks, and after a while, uh, after a few more years, he's working with Walter Becker on Flying Cowboys, this Ricky Lee Jones record.
Right.
So I said, man, I would love to work with that guy,
Yeah.
So I got called. He recommended me, and so I started working with Walter and become good friends with me. At the same time, um, I I had this we had this band with Vinnie Colaiuta and Gary Willis and Steve Tavallone called Audio Mind. We used to play, right, but we were the anti
Yeah.
sort of LA band. We would improvise sets and just
Yeah.
create chaos, and so a lot of drummers came to check Vinnie out, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of them was Miles's nephew,
Ah.
Vince Wilburn.
Wilburn.
Yeah, you met Vince
Yeah. 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 When you were over. Yeah. Yeah.
for Birth of the Cool when you
Yeah.
went to the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
Gosh.
So he recommended me Miles. He said, "Make me a tape," So I made him a tape,
Yeah.
and I sent it away and forgot about it. Meantime, we're working with Walter and Ricky,
Yeah.
and I got the call to go, and I said to Walter, "Man, Miles called me to do this gig, and I want to go, but I really want to finish the record. To me, it's awesome, right?
Yes.
Chuck Rainey, and it's like killing.
Yeah.
And, but he said, "Oh man, are you kidding? You got to go." So he almost pushed me out the door. And said, "You got to go." So in the meantime, I go, and I'm writing a bunch of music, sort of inspired by Marcus and that whole era. One of them on
Yes.
the road.
Yeah.
And Walter gets an imprint as a producer for Windham Hill Jazz.
Oh.
So
Hey.
he produced my first 2 records. He got me a record deal. So that was a long story to get to.
Well,
I finally get a chance to record.
Sure.
And So he produced those first two records,
Right.
early '90s,
Yeah.
and that was sort of the beginning of putting, real bands together
Right.
and writing for records and
Yeah.
thinking about projects and what you want to do next and how it all
Sure.
kind of works together.
Right. Was it you working with obviously that Sam Mendes and Thomas? Was it Thomas Newman?
Thomas Newman.
Yeah. So how did you? Because I don't think that was the first time you've worked with within that. So I think
Around that same time with Thomas Newman, um, sort of that late '80s session work kind of guy.
right.
Uh, I got a call from a contractor to work on this movie, and it was called Career Opportunities. It was one of Tom's first movies, and they needed sort of a fusion type band. So I called the guys that were in Audio Mine, Vinny
Right.
and
Yeah.
Steve and Gary Willis. And so we showed up. I showed up kind of early, and he kind of asked me, "How would you go about recording this?" He had some chords,
Yeah.
and so I just said, "Well, let's put the click up, and I'll play the pad first,
Yeah.
and we'll play to the pad."
Yeah.
So that's sort of
Yeah. Yeah.
set off something, and we've been working ever since, like
That's,
30, 35 years, something like that. And of course, nowadays for the big budget movies, a lot of them are temped,
yes.
and usually they temp with Tom's music.
Right.
But with that, the thing about writing for film is that, yeah, it's visual, but the real art of writing for film is under dialogue. How do you write and get that emotion and tone and rhythm together as an accompanist for the
Yes.
dialogue?
Yeah.
And one of the first things I like to do is and even Tom, he won't have the picture up the whole time.
Right.
He'll go in and out of watching picture. But a lot of times we'll bring the dialogue up,
Yeah.
you know, and find the tempo that works with the groove of the dialogue,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Totally.
The pace of the scene. That's the dialogue. It's not the cameras going back and forth.
Yeah.
It's the human part of it. So yeah, we do that. I used to work for this brilliant composer that I learned a lot from, named Don Peistrup, who who did only commercials, but he was brilliant at it. And he would get the VO.
Uh-huh.
He would actually find a good tempo for it and write it out rhythmically on
Okay.
the score, so that he could see it and see the gaps and you know
That's pretty.
really interesting, man.
That really is pretty cool. What?
And I
Yeah.
think when you write for film and TV or media now, you know, uh, it's about really writing the music for the director. It's
Yeah.
really not your music.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's his vision. It's not working for film is not a democracy.
Yeah. No.
You know,
That's true.
it's the director's vision, and a huge part of the art is translating what he's trying to tell you from his medium into yours,
Yes.
understanding what that is.
Are you working on anything at the moment in film?
Yeah, I got a couple things going on. Well, Monkestra Plays John Beasley came out last August,
Okay.
and because of COVID, we weren't able to tour like we
Yes.
normally would. But now we're starting to put together some streaming concerts and some
Wow.
videos. So some of the festivals are online this year.
Okay.
So we've done a few of those in the can, so that we can.
Yeah. Yeah, because what I think with the Monkestra, could you explain your approach to the Monk catalogue?
Ah, sure. I'll try.
Yeah, okay.
Well, first of all, the first thing I learned about Monk is that his music is really pliable.
Uh-huh.
Like most great songs are, right? Stevie,
Yeah.
Gershwin,
Yeah. Yeah.
Bach sounds great at any tempo, right?
Yeah.
So after I learned that, I felt like I could really put sort of my own voice and dream up whatever I have,
Yeah.
try to be still enough to listen to what's going on
Uh-huh.
and capture that, And after a while, uh, I learned that, singing into my iPhone, man,
Yeah.
I could get through sometimes the whole form of the chart, man, just by
Right.
going on a walk and
Yeah.
letting it flow, almost like I was playing a live gig, you know,
Hey.
but singing because, you know, the singing thing works good because you're not writing what you know how to play.
Ah,
You're writing what you hear, not what you know,
such a good. Yeah.
right? So, and yeah, I'm not making all those pitches. I'm not a singer,
Yeah.
but something happens when you start transcribing. It connects, and you go, oh, that's what that was. And you
Yes.
get to kind of the shape and the tempo
Yeah.
is huge for me. If
Yeah.
if if I know kind of what kind of groove I want to start with, that's the best foundation for me. You
Cool.
know, because everything kind of starts with that. I,
Yeah.
s- I beatbox, I do bass lines, and then I come back and transcribe and put it in
Right.
just on 2 lines,
Uh-huh.
sometimes 3 lines, and then I'll blow it up. I really go for the idea first, like even
Yes.
voicing wise, I'll just do something intuitive, you
Right.
know, and really just let my fingers move for voicings and stuff. Then I'll go back
Right.
and make it quote unquote theoretically sound
Yeah.
after that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't like getting slowed down by
Yeah. Yeah.
thinking too much. I'm just trying to be creative and write, man. That's the good stuff. You can
Yeah.
always go back and edit and shape it.
But no, that's great. Okay, so I should wrap things up by asking you about, what's coming now once we come out of this particular period. What things have you got in the pipeline, touring wise, and projects? That's
Sure. Yeah. During COVID, I did a, a Charlie Parker project with the SWR big band in Stuttgart.
okay.
So it's bird with strings, but not those arrangements or those songs particularly.
Right.
And what was interesting about it is that I did it with another arranger, a friend of mine named Magnus Lindgren from
Okay.
Sweden.
Yeah.
Yeah, really great arranger and tenor player, good musician. And so we're like passing scores back and forth, almost like songwriting, except we're arranging. Like I'll start something, a little
Yeah.
idea, and I'll write, and then he'll finish it and send it back, and I'll orchestrate it or add another section. It
Uh
was
huh.
really an interesting way to write. I've never done that with another arranger.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh, and then we were able to record it well, for one thing, we had gigs in August for Bird's birthday, of course, and it
Yes.
got
Yeah.
canceled. So we were able to record it in November in Stuttgart
Yeah.
with their radio orchestra,
Yeah.
and it turned out great. We got Joe Lovano, Miguel Zignon, Tia Fuller, Chris Potter,
Yeah.
all playing on it, doing guest artists, and
Okay.
it's really really fun. So
Sounds it.
that record's going to come out probably around Bird's birthday next year, this
Yeah.
year, August, September, and there's a tour October, November,
Yeah.
around that. And then also Chucho Valdez has got commissioned to write an opera for the Paris Opera, and he asked me to orchestrate and arrange it for him. So that's been a deep dive into. Well, it's the theme of the opera is all the orishas, you
Oh,
know.
okay. Yeah.
So,
Shango and yeah. Oh.
Tango,
Yeah.
Orion,
Yeah. Amazing.
and all those Santeria
Yeah.
songs that go with it, the
Okay.
bata that go
Yeah.
with it, and so sort of reimagined with an orchestra, and so that's going to happen in the fall, and then into 2022. There's going to be some touring, and
Oh, that sounds amazing. That sounds absolutely amazing. I can't wait to hear it and see it.
me
That's
too, man. I'm looking.
amazing.
I've got one tune down in the can, so I'm waiting for the
Oh,
next batch of tunes to come through.
oh, excellent. Can you just tell really the UK audience through the Ivors Academy about the International Jazz Day and how you became involved and what's happening this year? I know you've got a special concert every year. That,
Yeah. So Herbie Hancock was a UNESCO ambassador for the arts, and he pushed through sort of, I guess you'd call it legislation somehow,
Okay.
to make April 30th, every April 30th, International Jazz Day, like Earth Day or Women's Day. That's the same sanctioned day.
Yes.
And so they started putting on these concerts in a different city every year, global concert. And
Right.
it's streamed, I think last year was like 80 million people watched the concert online. And the first one was at the UN in New York, and then at the UNESCO headquarters in Paris.
Yeah.
Since then, we've been in Istanbul, Osaka, Cuba,
Yes.
Russia, the White House. We actually did it
Okay.
at the White House under
Yeah.
Obama. Of course, it would have had Obama in that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
we're beyond that now.
Uh, yeah.
Uh, anyway, and it's usually pairing these international artists with American artists, jazz artists.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're not jazz artists. Sometimes it's cool to put
Yeah.
different combinations of people together. And my job is to pick tunes that and kind of put these groupings of people together that
Right.
maybe have never. I love the challenge. I like to challenge the musicians.
Yeah.
Maybe never thought they'd play together and
Right.
play that kind of tune or that
Right.
kind of thing. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's a beautiful hang. It's a big, the hotel's a big party, of course, for a few days, and we rehearse for a couple days and then put on the concert.
Right. Oh.
This year, because of COVID, we're doing taping. So we taped uh, 2 days here in LA last weekend,
Yeah.
and so Herbie usually plays,
Yeah.
but because Chick had passed away, we
Yes.
had Herbie and Hubert Laws play Windows.
Oh.
You
Wow.
know, it's great to hear Herbie play Windows, man.
Wow.
And with Hubert, it's from
Yeah.
Hubert's original record.
Ah,
And we had Diane Reeves, Dee Dee Bridgewater, Jonathan Butler,
amazing.
did an Afro-Cuban version of Confirmation for Bird's
Yeah.
birthday.
Yeah.
Andra Day, who played Billie Holiday in the new Billie Holiday
Oh,
movie.
okay. Yes. Yeah.
Sang God Bless the Child with Herbie. It's beautiful.
Amazing.
And then I think McLaughlin's going to send a video in from Monaco,
Yeah. Yeah.
a couple of videos from Japan. And yeah, it should be a nice taped version of the show.
Yeah.
And hopefully next year we'll get back on the road again and
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
able to realize it fully.
Hopefully you can come bring it to London one year.
Oh man, that would be awesome. I love London, as you
Yeah.
know.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely the best. I would say it's the best place. But anyway,
I would say it's one of the best cities in the world, no
yeah,
doubt.
it's a good hang, I must say. So yes, no, it's been great speaking with you, and given I would say a brief look into the amazing things that you do, and to actually have our first sort of engagement with the International Jazz Day is obviously a wonderful thing as well for the Ivors Academy. So yeah, I'd like to say thank you, and hopefully we can get you one time when you're in London. We can actually do a live thing, a composers forum.
Oh, that'd be hip. I would love that. Well, I'll be hopefully if people behave themselves and we all get vaccinated or
Yeah.
we're able to do what we love to do.
Yes,
Maybe in the fall. That would be great.
that'd be great.
Thank you, Orphy, for inviting me too. I always love talking to you and especially talking music with you, man.
Absolute pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. Okay.
All right.